Welcome, everyone. This is Larry Johnson, founder of the Eight Principles, and we're doing a podcast today of one, I think the first one of a series I'm really looking forward to doing, and that is with the heads or headmasters of Christian secondary schools or independent schools. And I am really excited today because I have in front of me Rod Gilbert, who is the head of Santa Fe Christian. That's in San Diego. And that's something I never quite understood, but we'll get into it. And I'm really delighted to be wearing the colors today.
You look great.
Thank you, Rod, very
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome.
So, Rod, you've been there a few years. As we said a few moments ago, when people ask you what you do, you say, "Well, I'm the Dumbledore.
Yeah,
I'm without the magic." And I
that's exactly.
and I said, "But you got the Holy Spirit, which is a lot more powerful." And you agreed.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been there, Rod?
I'm in my sixth year. I moved here in spring 2018 from Austin, Texas to take on this role.
And what were you doing in Austin? Another headmaster job?
I was the head of Regents School of Austin. It's a K through 12 classical Christian school with about a little over 1,000 kids.
Oh, okay.
I was there 15 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's so. Do I take it you're a classical scholar? You can read Homer
I,
the original.
I don't know. I fell into the classical movement when I was in seminary, and my background was in more Greek. And I fell into a group of people in the classical Christian movement and just fell in love with it and wanted it for my own kids. And then eventually became a leader in that movement, but actually never mastered Latin.
Okay, nor Greek, right? No Greek.
I knew enough Greek to fake my way through it, but not enough to teach it. Yeah.
All right. So you're a seminary grad as well.
Yes. Yep.
And where'd you go?
Mid-America Baptist Seminary. I did my MDiv and
Okay.
then THM at Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh yes, I know the school well. Okay. I'm a YDS grad. You won't hold that against me, I hope.
Oh, no.
So a little more out there, but
Sure.
we had some Baptists at YDS when I
Good. Good for you. Yeah.
did. We did. Um, anyway, so well, on an off time, I'll tell you about my experiences with Brever Childs, who was my Greek at Yale, and
Okay.
I'll tell you about a little thing about that later. So, uh,
Sure.
let's just say I definitely learned very quickly it was a take no prisoners environment. Okay,
Oh, wow.
and I'll just leave it at that. Okay. So
Okay. And you
anyway, so
survived it. You
I
survived it,
I
which is
survived.
a major part of seminary. It's just surviving it. It's a lot to take in.
Well, I had one of my professors say to me, "Well, Larry, you better have found God by the time you got here, because you're
Yeah.
sure as hell I'm going to find him while you're here."
Totally understand.
And that's good advice. Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you obviously like doing this, I
I
presume.
do.
Okay.
Mhm.
What is it you like the most personally?
Uh,
What
for
kind
personally, I fell into the K-12 model in 1998 when I started a little Christian school in Raleigh, North Carolina, really as an experiment after seminary. And after about 6 months, I realized I get to be with kids 5 days a week all day, which is significantly different than when I was on staff at a church or when I was a teaching fellow at Southeastern Seminary. I I taught I helped teach one class, but the fact that the children and teens were so formative and young made it so much more exciting because everything was new. And when they're in college and older, it's like you're polishing apples. It wasn't near as much fun.
I like that. You're polishing apples.
Yeah, but here I had 5-year-olds around me this morning doing something, and they're so inquisitive, and everything is so new. And every day I awaken to a new level of just being enamored by watching God's work in little ones and teenagers. I'm addicted to it. Yeah, I can't get over it.
Well, now that your own children are grown, it's
Yep,
an opportunity to go back and visit those years again.
that's right.
What a blessing.
Yeah, I get to relive it every day from cute as a button lower school elementary children to inquisitive middle schoolers to eye rolling high schoolers. I have all three stages. I have all three stages in an amazing school, and they all have their differences, and
Mhm.
it's just fun to watch every day, all day.
Now, Santa Fe is a day school, correct?
We're a day school, K through 12. Mhm.
Have you tell me ever toyed with the idea of a boarding school or both or
No, I have some friends that have added on international boarding, and I think there's some strengths and weaknesses to that they deal with. I've just never been a part of a school that even opened up the idea, you
okay.
know.
All right. Well, there aren't that. I think the only one I know of is Stony Brook on Long
Yep.
Island.
Yeah, San Marcos Academy in San Marcos, Texas has some boarders as well, and they're around, but it's just there's a limited number. It's um, what is it, St. Stephen's in Austin. We used to play them in sports, and they still had some boarders, but it's more and more day school is the new trend.
All right. So this next question is a little loaded. So fasten your seatbelt, Rod. Okay.
I can handle it.
I'm a great friend. I love old movies, and there's the film All About Eve, where Betty Davis goes up her staircase to her dinner guest, and she says, "Buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be a rough night." Delivered in only the way that she can deliver a line like that, you know. So
Sure.
anyway, if you had to identify one, I'll allow two, but I prefer one. What would be the most, how do I want to word this? The most significant challenge in an existential way, I'm adding that piece of it,
Sure.
for the Christian school today in the United States? What would that be?
Hmm. I think that it may be easy because it's in the news a lot, but I think that Christian schools trying to settle in, how do they hold to certain traditions regarding sexuality, while at the same time being empathetic to people. And I think that I do think that the sexual culture agenda has hypersexualized children so much that the air that the children and teens breathe is now making them question and open up categories that I don't think they would have naturally dreamed of. And I think schools end up getting in the crossfire of these sexual identity discussions. And I think I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to be a whole generation of an over hypersexualized culture that then causes real damage in schools.
Until the culture manages to realize the damage they're doing and snap back from it, if that
I
happens.
hope so. I mean, you see in the trans events alone, you see some pushback in Europe with Tavistock and the ending of some surgeries, but Americans have not seemed to capture that yet.
No, no, I know the British Health Service has
Yeah,
eliminated those as well. Um,
yeah,
you know, gender dysphoria has been a mental illness, a
yeah.
dysfunction for a long, long time.
Yeah, 1914, it was first listed in I think in the AMA. So that's not new. The manifestation is the gender dysphoria in children and young teens. And
And the attempt to normalize it.
that's right. And normalize it. And then you have to accept it. And I think Abigail Shire's done some great work on it with the irreversible damage.
Mhm.
Uh, I think a pretty powerful work. And but I think that's a very hot topic, and schools end up getting in the crossfire of it regarding sports against other schools and safety of students. And so I do think that's a very hot topic. I mean, I could list five other hot topics, but you told me to list one, and I think that that's the one that we've all had to sort of buckle down and prepare for, and how we answer tender questions about children and teens. And
Mhm.
so it took up a lot of my time a year and a half, 2 years ago to sort of prep the school for it. So
What sort of reaction has there been among the parents of the student body?
they've been very affirming. We are affirming in our traditional views. So I've released a number of documents, mainly our that we hold to two genders based on Genesis 2. And I just repeat that over and over and over. And our families have been so thankful that I've just come out and said it. It's still the number one question that's asked in admissions tours here in San Diego. Number one.
How is the question posed, Rod?
Rod, I meet all families that are on tour. We do group tours 3 days a week at 10 in the morning. I'm the warm-up band before the VIP volunteers take them for a tour. So I get 15 minutes with them. I give them a little background of the school, and I set the stage, and then I say, what questions do you have? And still the number one question that people ask is, what is your view of gender dysphoria, sexuality? Everybody that's asked me the question in that context is hoping that I'll answer it in a traditional way.
Mhm.
And as soon as I do, you can just see okay. I had one grandmother on the tour ask me the question, and she said, I've got 9 more questions. And then I answered the question very clearly, short and kindly. And then I said, well, what are the other 9 questions? She said, I've got a good feeling I know the other 9. So I think that families, I don't know if it's throughout the nation, but it's certainly in California, a lot of traditional families are using it as a litmus test. And the fact that we just hold to 2 genders, I never would have thought when I was studying in seminary that I would have an admissions front door based on holding to 2 genders. I'm mystified by it. I understand dysphoria at a new level now because I'm empathetic to people that are struggling with it. It's a real psychological journey. Um, I feel heartache for them
Mhm.
and genuine concern. And but holding to 2 genders has been quite a fascinating phenomenon.
Well, it's the difference between a created natural state and the idea that gender is somehow a social construct,
Right,
which it
right.
is not. Um, and That's interesting. That's the number one. Well, I
I,
could, I'm trying to rewind myself back. Like that was not even on the agenda. It wasn't even anywhere on the menu anywhere. And it's not been that long, Ron.
No, and like I said, if even 8 years ago, if someone had told me this was going to be a hot topic, like, sure, are you sure? But it's in national news every day. It's trans female athletes, trans male athletes playing at an NCAA Division I level, the Olympics. I mean, it's a trickle down effect down to the public and private schools around the country. And California is not alone. I have friends around the country that are dealing with it just the same.
Okay. All right.
There
So,
you go.
so that's the number one.
Well, that was the first out of my mouth. I could come up with 10 more, but you said one. So,
Give me another one then. Let's go to the next one.
uh, let's see. I think another one is a little harder for some people for me to try to explain, but I think in the evangelical mind, and you'll get this from a seminary perspective. I grew up as a fundamentalist and as a conservative Southern Baptist as a child.
I have a similar, we'll talk about similar journey
Sure.
as well, but I had a person say to me, "Oh, you mean those fundamentalists?" That was the,
Not a lot of fun in them,
no.
but so I was brought to Christ through lovely Baptists.
Mhm.
The good of it was they brought me to the foot of the cross, and for that I'm forever grateful. Baptists, and I think a lot of Protestant denominations created a bifurcated sense of the universe, the sacred stuff over here and the worldly material world over here. It's a form of heresy that is deeply embedded in the Protestant mind. And so getting families at Protestant schools to see all things sacred and not just, well, we do chapel, therefore we're more Christian. And it's this heresy I've been trying to break through for 25 years that doing math is a sacred act.
Now
Going to chapel is a sacred act.
as a seminary grad, there's a name for that heresy.
And what is that? You tell me. I don't. I've been in seminary a long time. I'm a practitioner now.
Isn't it something nomianism, ultranom? It's something like that.
It's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm in the practical side now. So I've
I,
forgotten a lot of big words.
I've forgotten all the other stuff, the high-minded stuff, right?
But I do think this is a real issue because we're training Francis Schaeffer talks about the divide, bifurcated universe, and a lot of his stuff that I sort of learned how to talk about it. And I do think it's incipient in a lot of Christian ministries where the worldly is bad, the material world is bad, sacred is good. And so it's a subtlety,
And,
but I think it's a threat. It's a constant threat in the evangelical mind.
yeah, it is because in what does it say in Genesis? And he created it, and it was good.
Yeah, yeah.
It was good.
The psalmist said, the law tastes as sweet as honey.
Mhm.
Well, that metaphor only makes sense if honey actually tastes sweet.
That's right.
And so God created sweetness, He created aroma, He created beautiful designs for us to look at with our eyes. He created music tones here on this earth. He created the ability to build bridges. These are amazing feats of the creative mind because we have the Imago Dei in us. And so because we've worshiped Christ, we should be very creative. And sometimes Christians just don't know how to connect their creativity to Christ.
We're created just a little below the angels, Rod. That's what it is.
Yeah,
And of course, the angels are probably saying, "Why do you want to do that, God? You're just going to come with all this kind of problems. Why,
that's true.
why go in that direction? I don't get
That's
it."
true. That's true.
But yeah, it's the entire universe. There's not a separation of sacred and secular.
Mhm.
Um, and the what is it? Ecclesiastes, the preacher says, "There's a time and a place for everything under heaven."
That's right.
Um,
That's
and well, so that's where you started in the very
right.
fundamental world of evangelical Christianity.
And I sort of grew an understanding through reading scripture that I had to take away some of the legalism
Mm.
and find more grace and still hold to the traditional dogma of the Bible. And so that's the way I've led the schools that I've led, is how to show there's a singularity of the universe. All things are sacred, and let's shed away some of the fundamentalism.
Mhm. So,
So
in that regard, tell me a little bit about the makeup of your student body, the sectarian backgrounds of your student body. Where do they come?
we, by design, we're an independent private school. We have about 80 churches represented within a 40-mile radius. We're not tied to a church or denomination. We're heavily Protestant bent, but we have a growing number of Catholics that are showing up for admissions, which has been wonderful. Um, we're so even the way that the board was originally structured, no church can have more than 3 board members.
So that it was a group of churches that fed the leadership, is the way it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, so we have great churches in the county, a lot of great churches, and but we can't have, so right now I have 12 board members. I can't have more than 3 from any one of the churches. And so it creates this little counterbalance that we're not all Presbyterians or all non-denominational, or Calvary chapels are big around here, or Lutheran or Episcopalian, and of course some Baptists, but an EV free. And but the fact that none of our board members have to be from us have a variety of those Protestant based churches, I think is very refreshing. And that's caused our school to have the same thing. Now, we're a covenant based school, which is not very common these days, which means one parent must be a believing, active Christian in order for the children to come here.
Hmm.
So we're not, the other model is missional, where you have to be, the family has to be willing for their kids to be taught at a Christian school, but they don't have to be practicing Christians. Here
Exactly.
we're called covenantal.
Covenantal.
So, one parent has to be an active believer that goes to church.
Okay. I'm working with another Christian school in regard to fundraising, and they're covenantal as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A little aside, the head didn't know that was the word you used. He wanted to use other
Oh,
words, and I said it's covenantal. That's the word you want.
that's
That's
the word. That's
that
a technical industry word.
that
Yeah.
sends the right signal. Okay.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, so then you have a variety of everyone from very conservative Southern Baptists to probably conservative Anglicans, and,
Yeah.
and all that sort of thing.
Presbyterians, a lot of non-denominational churches, which last times means they went to Southern Baptist seminaries or Dallas or Fuller,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they just fall in this, the non-denominational sort of basket, but there's a thread of traditional views and their statement of faith and moral convictions, that are very common.
Or as a professor at Yale would say to me, oh, that's unhitched piety.
I like that.
It's not connected to anything that we can
Sure,
identify in church history. Um,
sure.
um, oh, can you tell me a story of something that really touched your heart while you've been doing this job?
Well, I can. I think my life is stories. So if I'll start with one, and then about it with a kid,
Mhm.
and then if there's another one that I could do with adults. But with a child, when I was first learning how to be an administrator, a teacher came into my office and said, "I need a man to talk to this kindergartner. He was peeing out in the playground." And so, okay, so I was like 28 years old. I didn't have a clue what to do. So I go out there. The kid
Did
looks
you
like
have younger brothers? Did you have younger brothers?
I did have a younger brother. We peed outside all the time. So I just didn't know where to take it. So, but I had a teacher who was very upset. So I walked down the hall. There's a little boy there, and I thought he's going to wet himself. He's so afraid that I'm coming down the hall. So I grab a football and we start throwing the football back and forth. And then finally I hold the ball and he just looks at me and I says, "Been peeing in the bushes." And he went, "Yes." And so we kept throwing the ball. And I said something like, "Tell me what you were thinking. What were you thinking?" And he said, "I tried to get behind the bushes and I was hoping no one would see me." And so we just kept throwing the ball. And then he just stared at me. He waited when he got the ball. Like, what is Mr. Gilbert going to say next? And I said, "I have to tell you, I think you made a really good decision there. I'm very proud of you." And he smiled, and then we walked back up to the building. And he was just 5, just a little kid.
Yeah.
As we're walking back up, I said, I said, "Here's an idea. Why don't you just try to go before you go to the playground?" And he looked at me like I was the smartest man in the universe. He went, "That's a great idea." And we were like bonded, like two men in the universe doing life together. And I've told that story 100 different ways because there's truth involved, but there's a lot of grace and understanding of the age of the child. And there's there's a bonding and mentorship where you can address an issue without turning it while allowing a child's moral dignity to remain intact.
Yes.
And I was too young to really know what was going on at the moment, but the more I reflected on it later, I thought the Holy Spirit gave me that little story to share with people. So,
The
I,
boy's
I,
moral dignity. Uh,
yeah, the dignity is held in check, and
um,
felt fine.
somehow I think the least thing that Jesus we upset with is some boys peeing out on the ground. So I have a hard time thinking he'd get exercised over that.
I don't think you would, and there was no nefarious intent. He's 5.
A very innocent, very
Yeah,
responding to nature's call, and and he wasn't thinking ahead, right? But I gotta go. So what
I
about
gotta go. Yeah.
yeah?
Uh,
And
uh, yeah.
so
So here's an adult story is that about a year ago, I was with my board of directors at a dinner, and they were asking me to explore what are the wild dreams we could have 10 to 15 years in the future. And it was so enjoyable. During COVID, heads and boards couldn't have that kind of discussion. We were just surviving every day. Everybody in the world was. So it's the same board and myself. We survived it. And I will never forget that 2.5 hour dinner. It will rest in my memory the rest of my life because these are people that I love and admire. They come from different vocations, different churches, male, female, different age of kids. There's two grandparents, two that have kids that haven't hit puberty. The diversity of the room was beautiful. And for 2.5 hours, we just got to dream out 10 to 20 years in the future. Genuine, like what if the Lord would want us to do this?
mhm.
And at the end of the night, it was so pleasing to me as a head to have such wonderful people that I had envisioned it would be like us sitting around a campfire making s'mores.
Oh yeah.
And so I said that to my wife the day before. And so she went out and bought me s'mores stuff. And I took to the board meeting.
Oh,
And
okay.
at the end of it, I said, I know that sounds really corny, but it's such a pleasure to get to dream with such fine people that I imagined the whole time I've been imagining we were sitting around a campfire. And Angie actually brought us some more stuff. And is that corny? Because I know y'all are like really adultish. And they loved it. They jumped on it. They made it. We had a little fire maker there, little and we made the board and I made s'mores and just sat around and laughed and enjoyed each other's company. And that was February of 2024. And I'll never forget that the rest of my life. Just the pleasure of getting to work with such amazing people.
You've tapped upon something that is so fundamentally human when we share food together.
Mm-hmm.
It levels everything.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the life of Jesus when you share food with one
That's
another.
right.
When he went into someone's home,
Yeah.
he was eating with them. Of course, that, as we know, that was not universally seen as a plus thing. The propositional religionists of the time were all over him for that.
Yeah.
Um,
They
uh,
were heretical. They're wrong. And he saved the best wine for last. He blessed Mary for dumping expensive nard on his feet. He had a barbecue with Peter after he rose from the dead. They had a beach barbecue. The aroma of charcoal
mhm.
is forever in Peter's nostrils because of Jesus. Jesus cooked with him after the resurrection.
Beach barbecue, Rod. I love it. I love it. And
Beautiful. Yeah.
uh, well, if you think about just the choices that Jesus made in his first disciples, who were these guys? Well, they were the equivalent of longshoremen. All right.
Yeah.
They were,
Were fishermen rednecks.
yeah, they were rough and tough,
They were.
uneducated. But
Yeah,
something about men like that, they can smell a phony a mile away.
that's right.
They,
They were they had a good BS meter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they know that it's very sensitive. Oh, here we go. Here it is. And yeah, I heard this expression once from in a sermon referring to Jesus, and the minister said, and there's Jesus sitting over there at a table full of sinners having a wonderful time because he loved people.
He did.
He loved everyone.
Genuinely, he genuinely enjoyed them as
Yeah,
human. Yeah.
yeah.
And they could feel it. They could feel that.
That focusing in on you.
That's
Well,
right.
like Zacchaeus coming up to the tree, come on down. I'm going to have dinner with you tonight. But the way it was delivered, oh yeah, sure, I want to do that. So
May we be like him every day. Yeah.
every day.
What that hospital with people we agree and disagree with, you know.
So tell me about Santa Fe Christian. What do you think its number one strength is? And that could be academic or social life or success in the world, whatever you want to say.
Well, when I moved here and when I interviewed and when I moved here, it was the same thing and it's still the same thing. And there's a DNA mentorship thing here between the teachers and coaches and the children and teens. So when I got here, you could sense it, uh, that there was a relational connection that was very natural between the teachers and the students. And Angie and I tell this story many times that when we were actually interviewing, we were up in the courtyard quad, and we both noticed this and then talked about it that night at the back of the hotel. This is when I was being interviewed. So this is before anybody really knew what I was looking for. And there was some activity going on up in the courtyard, and the teenagers were doing it. And while they were doing it, they were glancing over to get the eye of the high school principal. They weren't just doing it. They wanted to know that that man over there was seeing them. And there was something about that, like your kid on the soccer field wants to
Mhm.
just see. We both picked up on it. The kids were doing the fun thing, and then they were doing this. And then they would smile because he'd smile back. And there is a magic to that is if you have a high intense academic environment, it's hard to teach the teachers to do that very naturally. And I would say that Santa Fe is known for this. And my job has been to cultivate it and make it best of class and mentorship. But I didn't come here to fix it because we weren't mentoring well. My job as the guardian is to accentuate the strength and to make it even stronger.
Okay.
And Pete, I'm not. A lot of people say that. Alums say it, and of course, we get kids into great universities, and 15% go to play D1, D2 sports, and we have great fine arts, and all those things are true. Um, but the magic sauce is really this mentorship thing that's very evident.
And unusual today.
I think so, and I think that it's and the kid, what's that Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, is talking about we're the most connected society ever, and then we're the most lonely. And our teenagers, I do think, are fed a feast of relationship with the teachers and coaches. They get a feast every day. And 2 years ago, we started making them turn off their phones, which is now becoming something during the school day. And but they're getting seen by their coaches and teachers, and they know it.
Well, I've been on the website, and I know these.
Oh,
I know these photographs are curated. I'm in the business. I know how they're chosen. But when I got one thing I didn't see was anyone staring at a screen.
oh, interesting.
I didn't see any of that.
I've not looked at our website through that lens.
Not that I saw. All right.
Yeah,
Well, you just walk around today, a young old,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they're cut off from everything else. They're
yeah.
getting all their reality through unreality.
They are. It's an uphill battle, but we've never allowed K through 8 phones during the school day. A year and a half, almost 2 years ago, we turned them off in the high school, and we did after a year of trying to figure out how to do it. The administration came up with a very simple formula, and it. Remember the 70s when we would fly, there was like a smoking section in the airport.
Oh yeah.
Remember the smoking section? Well, we in our quad we have a cell phone section.
Hmm.
So if anybody says, "Do you allow phones on campus?" Sure, we're not Luddites. You just have to use them over there. And are the kids perfect? Do they not turn their phones on in the bathroom? I'm sure they do. They're normal kids. But when I had a one of my former board members here last month, and 450 teenagers were in the quad during a 15-minute break, and they were loud. I mean, the talking. And she said, "Why are they so loud?" I went, "What do you mean, why are they so loud?" She said, "They're just loud." I said, "They're just talking." And I said, "What do you notice?" She said, "I don't know." And I said, "Look again." She said, "There are no phones."
They're talking.
We had pickleball, spike ball, kids playing chess, a guitar, and 400 something kids just talking. These are high schoolers and
Mhm.
not one phone in that zone. And I think it's a gift that our high school administrators are giving these students to
Oh yeah.
learn how to do this face-to-face thing without the phone.
Well,
So,
and kids that age are naturally loud. That
yeah,
that's their volume is always up here.
and I celebrate it. Yeah.
Well, you are doing them a great service because just in a very practical sense, when these kids go out into the world and they have to compete, their ability to look someone in the eye and to
Right,
engage them in a conversation and give them a firm handshake and be listening as well as speaking.
right.
These are critical life skills, Rod.
They are. What Mark Twain said, you have 2 ears and one mouth, use them proportionately. And
That's right.
so we're doing our best to train the kids to listen with critical thinking and empathy, and be an empathetic listener. You don't have to agree, but you can be winsome in disagreement. You don't have to be a jerk. And
That's right. Well, I presume you're going to answer this last question a particular way. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of Christian schools in this country?
oh, I've always been optimistic. I've never woken up once with any shred of pessimism about the Christian school industry. If my I'm already bent toward wake up every day and go, let's go on an adventure. That's my natural bent.
Mhm.
I think now the Christian school industry is sort of coming into a new level of its aging. In the 70s, it had sort of escaped the public school behavior.
Yes.
And that's why the academies were built up. They would call them, and there were social reasons for that. I think that in the last 20 years, there's been more of an effort to bring up the quality of the Christian schools. A lot of Christian schools, unfortunately, see themselves as a safeguard from the world
Yes.
rather than a
Yes.
place of excellence. And so I would call that Sunday school 5 days a week.
Mhm.
And it's actually a very poor education in lots of cases. But a lot of Christian schools have been on their sort of next generation of what does it mean to really develop great quality thinkers and students that create things of value.
Mhm.
And they learn lessons so that they can create things of value. And what does it mean to be valuable for the kingdom and for society? And so I think this is sort of the next generation of Christian schooling is if you can connect the Imago Dei to the creative agency in each child, to the moral agency of they don't need to be victims. They get to choose to go be involved in something, and then we send them out into the university or whatever they do after high school in a way that is good for themselves and good for society. I think we're gonna have a better society. And so I think it's a new age of being a great time to be in a Christian school. Unfortunately, the culture fights of that all that trans stuff I mentioned end up creating a little bit more difficulty of purpose. Like I don't want people coming here just to escape that. That's not the purpose. And I want them to leave as cultivated thinkers that are ready to go be amazing workers, amazing family members, amazing leaders, creative, risk-taking
Mhm.
uh, people that are willing to fail and recover and have a graciousness where they let their team fail and recover and take on risks. So
Two things I thought of there. First of all, I agree with you. There was a time at which the Christian school was a form of escape.
yeah,
Let let's avoid all this toxicity in the general culture. And when I moved to Idaho, one thing I found, first of all, there's a sizable amount of the population in the valley where I live, 20% that are LDS, otherwise known as Mormons. Okay.
right, right,
They send their children to the public schools. And the way they sort of counterbalance it is they have these little, they call them seminaries, and they're little separate things that they go to. They're kind of after school stuff. But
right.
one thing I've always respected the LDS for, my neighbor across the street is LDS, is that they engage with the community, Rod.
Yeah.
They really do. And my neighbor across the street's my dentist of many years, and he comes over to my fire pit and he'll say, I know everything is okay in the world if Larry's out by the fire having a cigar and scotch. You know, everything's okay. He himself is a non-smoker and a teetotaler. And
Nothing like a cigar and scotch to make
that's
the
right.
evening go.
And I gave him a Diet Coke, and we're fine. But there's not that sense of escapism, you know.
Right,
Um,
right,
and then for many years, the Ivy colleges were all founded as Christian organizations to
right,
further Christianity.
right,
Their reason for being so selective wasn't just to be what's the word elitist, which is a horrible word now, but
right,
they felt they needed to choose the students with the greatest potential so that this kind of education would enable them to have the greatest impact in the world.
right,
It really wasn't about them. It wasn't about getting a great
right,
career, making lots of money. No.
right,
Who are the students that we can train that
right.
have the greatest impact on the world? And you've said it to the greatest impact for Christ's kingdom.
That's right.
And I really like that. And so you're not a careerism school.
Oh no. And well, the early seal of Harvard with Christo et Ecclesio, Christ for the church.
Christ with the church.
Harvard, I'm sure, still has a lot of good qualities, but that's not its purpose now. It changed.
Yeah. Yale was one of the last ones to change. I'll stand up for Yale since I'm an Eli. Kingman Brewster was president when I was there. He was the first president in its more than 200-year history that was not a clergyman. Um,
Wow.
the rest were all congregational clergymen. And
Right.
the school was founded because they didn't feel that Harvard was doing a good enough job training ministers. And so
Mm.
that's how it was founded in the first place. So it's because it's obviously kind of going in this other direction. But there's a whole push at Yale to push back against that. A lot of the alumni are like, we don't like this.
Wow.
And it's called the Buckley Institute. Um,
Oh,
and
you mean William F. Buckley of
William F. Buckley Jr. Yeah,
yeah,
he's the he's an Eli,
yeah.
very outspoken. He's deceased now,
Didn't
but
he write a book, God something in Yale?
God and Man at Yale.
Yeah. I read it probably in my night in the 90s. Yeah,
And he was on every liberal's hit list after that.
I bet.
The thing I liked about him is he was a realist. You see, he didn't want to die on a sword. He wanted to get change.
Yeah.
And whenever he was asked who he was going to vote for, his answer was always the same. I'm going to vote for the most conservative candidate who can win.
That's me.
I'm looking at who is going to incrementally move it in the right direction. By the way, lifelong devoted Roman Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Married to the same woman
Mhm.
whole time.
Mhm.
I had a chance to meet him twice.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. That once at Vanderbilt and once on an airplane. We just happened to be seated together. But and he always looked, whether he was in a dinner suit or whether he was in a regular business suit, he always looked like had slept in his clothes.
A wrinkled Yankee.
Wrinkle. So, well, this has been wonderful, Rod. We're going to do this
I've
again.
enjoyed this, Larry.
And I hope it didn't, strip you down to your underwear too much. Okay.
Not at all. I spend all day as a headmaster. I spend all day in difficult situations. So this was very pleasant to spend time with you, Larry.
All right. Well,
I really appreciate
I want to say to my audience, I'm wearing the colors today, everyone.
it.
We're very kind to send me this. And
Of
one
course.
final question. You're in San Diego. How the heavens did you get the name Santa Fe?
So the neighborhood right across the highway from here is Rancho Santa Fe.
Oh, yeah.
Santa Fe means holy way. So this is the trek north up to El Camino Real, where a lot of the missions were put in place a long time ago by the Roman Catholics. So the Rancho Santa Fe neighborhood is very prominent here.
Oh,
And
yes.
so when the property was purchased from a military academy by Tim LaHaye in his church in 1976,
Yeah.
found a K-12 school in North County. It was a reflection of being this close to that neighborhood and the love for the name Holy Way. So,
Okay. All right. Well, I've been to Rancho Santa Fe many
okay.
times.
Yeah, we
Visit.
have a lot of families there.
Yeah. Okay. Nice neighborhood. All
Of
right.
course. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
All right, sir. Everyone, I've been interviewing Rod Gilbert, who's the head at Santa Fe Christian School. And we're going to do this again sometimes, but this is the first in a series of ones we're going to be doing with heads of Christian schools. So stay tuned. The others are coming.